All right. Welcome, NOBCChE family. We are so excited to have you all join us today for our Conversation with Leadership panel. Today, our discussion will span across many topics, including navigating through life in STEM, especially during the heightened awareness of social injustice and racial disparities, as well as what it takes to be a leader and what else you can do to get the most out of your NOBCChE experience. Today, we are joined by various leaders of NOBCChE, and we'll get their insight about these topics and hear about their experiences. If you have a question, feel free to place them in the Q&A box. I'll try to work them in as the discussion goes, but for sure, the last 10 minutes will be dedicated specifically to you. Now to introduce our panelists. First, we have Dr. Renee Robinson.
Hi, NOBCChE. I'm Renee Robinson, President-elect of NOBCChE. I also am an Associate Professor of Chemistry at Vanderbilt University, where I have a research lab that focuses on disparities in Alzheimer's disease. And just to loosen up things, I'm gonna share a fun fact about me that you may not know. I actually ride a motorcycle, so I have a Ninja ZR6, and so I ride and I try to be safe when I'm out there riding fast.
Thank you, Dr. Robertson. Next, we have Dr. Paul Adams.
How's everybody doing? My name is Paul Adams. I'm an associate professor at the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville, Department of Biochemistry and Biochemistry. Also have an appointment in the program of cellular and molecular biology. And fun fact about myself is I spend a lot of time on the weekends on softball diamonds, volleyball courts, and basketball gyms throughout our region with my 16, 13, and 10-year-old children. And that's pretty fun because I don't think about science when I'm watching them.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Next, we have Dr. Sharon Neal.
Hello, NOBCChE family. Good to be with you today. I'm Sharon Neal. I'm on the faculty in chemistry and biochemistry at the University of Delaware in Newark, not Wilmington, Delaware. And I'm Northeast Regional Chair of NOBCChE. And I've been at Delaware for more than 20 years, and I'm sitting here struggling trying to come up with a fun fact so that I don't look like the workaholic nerd that I truly am. Okay, I look maybe a little too much truthfulness, but I really do love, I am sort of an egghead, so I really do love film, and I love to read, and I love music. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Neal. Now we have Dr. Kevin Ileka.
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. My name is Kevin Ileka. I'm currently serve as a national parliamentarian for NOBCChE. I'm also an analytical chemist at Bristol Myers Squibb in New Jersey. And I don't know if I can top Renee's motorcycle hobby, but one fun fact about me is I can speak 4 languages.
Thank you, Dr. Ileka. And next we have Brianna Sims.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Sims. I'm a 4th-year doctoral candidate at the University of Mississippi. Since Dr. Ileka took my language thing, I'm fluent in sign language. My fun fact will be that I actually was a 2-sport athlete in college. I ran both cross country and track, and I currently serve on the executive board of the University of Mississippi chapter of NOBCChE.
Thank you, Brianna. And lastly, I'm Victoria Parker. I will serve as your moderator for today, but I am the National Secretary as well as co-chair of the communications teams for NOBCChE. I'm a postdoc at Massachusetts General Hospital, as well as Harvard Medical School in the Department of Radiology. Thank you all. Thank you all for panelists, for being here. I kind of just want to first start off the discussion about NOBCChE. I don't know about all of you, but since I've joined NOBCChE, NOBCChE has helped me to excel in graduate school and even more importantly, to finish strong. So I kind of want to get an idea of how do you all feel NOBCChE has impacted your life, and what makes you come back to NOBCChE as much as you have?
Well, I can definitely kind of speak to that. So NOBCChE is by far my absolute favorite conference that I've ever attended. I believe this is my 4th NOBCChE conference. Literally, I've met some of my greatest friends here at this conference. I've made so much of a family here at this conference. And, you know, I think that this is really like my community. This is the place that I can be, where I can be a scientist and be an intellectual person. But also I can, you know, listen to Dr. Robinson rap about Cardi B at the at the award shows and things like that. And so I feel like NOBCChE really allows me to be my truest self and like bridge my intersectionality as a Black chemist. So I really appreciate that about this conference.
Yeah, I would echo what you just said, Brianna. I mean, I think there are many rooms that I've had to walk into in life. And when I walk into a NOBCChE conference or just in the presence of, you know, NOBCChE colleagues and friends, it's the one place as a scientist where I feel like I can just and like, all right, so this is what I get, this is what I don't get, this is what's going on, this is what I need. And then I can share some things with, you know, other people along the way. So I always feel encouraged and inspired every time I get to see you all and hear all the fabulous things that you're doing. But also when I get to connect and realize like the struggle is real and I'm not the only one going through. So NOBCChE is, you know, all of that for me.
I'd like to share a story that may kind of help connect what this organization has meant to me. So the first scientific conference I ever went to, I was a senior level graduate student, and I was asked to attend the Biophysical Society meeting. And so I get to that meeting, and outside of the poster sessions and sitting in the back corners of some of the oral presentations, I was at this meeting with over 2,000, maybe 3,000 people, and I felt alone. The first time I went to a NOBCChE meeting, it was almost as if I wanted to yell out, "Oh my God, I'm with my people." And I was still able to talk about many of the things I talked about at the Biophysical Society meeting. But my experience was entirely different. And I'll just let that sit for you just a second.
Well, yeah, so just echo what Paul Adams say, you know, just being around your people, being around family. I just want to start off this panel, this conversation by saying rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. I hope that seeing the events and seeing how society views us as Black people really showed the importance of how important NOBCChE as a conference is. You know, we always need a space where we could be amongst ourselves, you know, and do what we love. We're all here because we're scientists. We're all here because we love science, and we shouldn't have that taken away from us. So NOBCChE to me, just like all the panelists were saying, is, you know, it's a sense of family where I can be who I want to be, you know, and not feel ashamed or feel unsafe. So, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I think actually this can be a great segue into next topic. We're all family here. We all are, you know, great at what we do in STEM, you know, but most importantly, you know, we're all human beings. And with a lot of the social injustices and racial disparities that have been brought about for many years and that have come to light now, first of all, are you all okay? How are you all handling or coping with everything that's going on? And I guess what advice would you also give to students and professionals that could be experiencing some of the same things?
Well, I'm going to jump in because I'm actually the person who's been in NOBCChE member the longest, right? I was sitting here trying to remember what year was it for my first NOBCChE conference, and I'm sure it was in the 1980s, right? So, because I graduated, I got my Ph.D. at Emory in 1988. So I went to a NOBCChE conference some year before that. So it's been a long time. And for sure, and I was thinking very much like many of the other panelists about the distinction between how I feel at NOBCChE meetings and how I feel at ACS meetings. Biophysical Society meetings, I've been to that one too, and many others. And of course, the fact that this is home and that you're embraced and welcomed, not tolerated. And I think that that realization that, you know, I think many of us have had the experience where you see people you know at a larger meeting and it's not convenient for them to acknowledge that they know you, so they don't, right? And so these things are not trivial, right? And I think it's really important for us to not diminish. So one of the ways we all humans cope with challenge is to minimize it. And that is a good idea in the short term, but it's not a long-term strategy. And as we deal with this COVID-19 moment and racial disparities moment, I think it's really important for us to recognize that we might need to minimize something on the short term just to get through a short-term incident, but we don't need to minimize things long-term. We need to figure out a way to make connections with our network and our community so that we maintain our mental health. I have a small group of women faculty that I get with once a week. And just like Dr. Robinson said, you know, get real and, hey, I'm going through, this is what I'm dealing with. You have to have a circle of friends with whom you can do that. That's really more important now than ever. And so I hope that one of the things that everyone is doing, even though this is a new virtual format for us, is that we're still finding a way to make those meaningful connections with our NOBCChE family.
Yeah, I think in terms of, you know, how am I doing? You know, in this moment, I'm okay because I'm here and I'm getting to spend time with you all. But it comes and goes and ebbs and flows. And so, you know, everything was good last week. And then once I get caught up on things happening in the world, you know, last night is just like, you know, why am I even feeling not surprised, you know, unsurprised? I knew this was coming. And I'm from Louisville, so, you know, I didn't expect a whole lot there. And so then I get frustrated and I get extremely, I'm angry. I get very angry. And then I get, I don't know, I just feel like, you know, what more can I do? What more can I do? And I always feel like it's not enough. And so I'll go through that moment and then I have a moment to breathe and hear from others. And then I have this moment, which is, okay, I have NOBCChE and I have things that I've been gifted to do. So let me try to use all of the best energies and everything that I have in a way that I know it's not going to solve all of our problems. It's, you know, I'm not in criminal justice, social justice. That's not my lane, but I am a humanist and that's my lane in the form of science. And so that's kind of how I'm able to cope, is to twist that into, we need y'all and we need y'all to be able to get to where it is you're trying to go. So if I do something to help in that vein, or, you know, connect some things to make it happen, then that helps me to be able to cope right now.
Well, I'll speak to this. So, and I'm gonna say, you know, as a book that was written called "Who's Afraid of the Large Black Man" that I read a couple of years ago, and you know, we from that book I got, you know, we're supposed to put on this persona and you know, everything was gonna be all right, and you know, taking care of family at home and everything else. And Sharon said something that resonated with me, because I think in the short term, I think it you know, I take myself back to, I guess it was March or April when we were dealing with George Floyd. You know, I was like, okay, here we go again. You know, here we go again. Let's get through this. But after a while, you know, it starts to wear on you. And for me, I've been able to cope, and I've needed to have some coping mechanisms. I actually, you know, once a month, my fraternity brothers and I, we get together and we just sit on the Zoom call, and we don't discuss anything of necessary importance. And that's been a very, it's almost been therapeutic for me. Also getting involved with some aspects of my church. And I find myself needing that more and more as the summer, and now we get into the fall go along, because, so last night, over the summer, my son saw this shirt, so I bought it for him. He's 12, just turned 13. And little Paul, it says, I can't breathe. I know we saw a lot of shirts like that going on. So last night he comes to, I was in the living room, and he said, "Dad, I want to wear my I Can't Breathe shirt tomorrow." And it hit me, and it hit me even harder. He said, what happened to that girl could have been Sydney or Haven. And Sydney and Haven are my daughters. So now I'm at a point now, we talk about long-term things, I'm no longer worried about my son. I'm worried about everybody in my family, because this is, for me, has hit home to really say it really doesn't matter. And I go back to Sandra Bland and that, but this one right here yesterday, to have my children, my 10 and 13-year-old children, really see this thing resonating at a time where they're trying to approach adolescence. It's really why I think I've had some challenges in trying to cope. And again, I lean on, like I said, some of my church groups, as well as my fraternity brothers have helped to be a sounding board to me, because this is still not discussed in any great detail on my virtual faculty meetings. And I am pretty convinced, although I've had some conversations outside of my faculty at the university, I've been asked to take part of, this is still not something that's discussed amongst the people who I virtually walk the halls with right now, or who I used to walk the halls with. And I don't know if that's ever going to change. And so this opportunity and outlets like this, also from a professional standpoint, serve as therapy for me as well. So.
Yeah, I would also kind of add to that. Last night after receiving the news, my first kind of thought was, dang, I wish the NOBCChE conference was in person. And just so that, because I don't think that there was a way for us to stop the disappointment or stop the hurt, but to have the sense of the NOBCChE family with me, that sense of community, I think would have made such a big difference for me in this particular space. And as it pertains to coping, I will admit that time after time after time, and so on and so forth, that this continues to happen, I find myself kind of throwing my all into whatever is right in front of me. And usually that's my fume hood. Usually that is my community service. Usually that is writing or, something like that. But I really appreciate my friends and my NOBCChE family that text me and calls me just to check on me. And when I say me, I mean my whole me, not, oh, well, what are you doing? Or, oh, how's work going? How's research going? But saying, no, how are you? How you really doing? That's really important to me. And so I just want to encourage everyone to just kind of take a moment to you can sit in it, that's okay. But make sure you get up to and realize that it's sad to say, but the world is going to continue to push and things are going to keep going, but check in with your feelings and check in with yourself and know that you also you can't save the world. You can't do it all. It's not all on your shoulders to do that. So do what you can where you can, but make sure you take a break as well and check in with yourself.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, Brianna, thank you for saying that. Yeah, we really needed a NOBCChE in-person conference this year for sure. In terms of how I'm doing, it's tough, right? Like Dr. Robinson was saying, emotions go up and down. But what I can say, if I can give a recommendation to some grad students or professionals even, is, take a mental health break. Don't get bogged down by the work at hand. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be happy, right? So I think sometimes, and a mental health break can look different for everyone. Some people like to read a book. Some people like to walk outside. Some people like to ride a motorcycle, but I think that's really important for me, myself. This year I started journaling, I started writing down my feelings. It's something I've never thought I had to do in the past, but a lot of the world has become really, really overwhelming for me, especially when you when you exist in a space where you don't get that support. And I know that for some of us, or if not most of us on this call, are probably the few or only Black person in their department. So when something happens, the entire department looks to them like, hey, how does the entire Black community feel? And even when you get requests like that, it's okay to say no, right? It's okay not to be the sole D&I person for your whole company or your whole university, because honestly, that's not your job. You were not hired to solve those problems. You were hired to do science. So I think kind of setting those barriers, respectfully, of course, setting those barriers to, you know, to protect yourself at the end of the day.
Woo! Panel, if you can only see what some of the comments are actually from a lot of our audience members. I just want to take the time out again just to thank you all for being so transparent and open. Like, the love that is coming on this feed right now, it's tremendous. Like, just being your unapologetic, true individual selves means so much to a lot of the people that are on this call, especially a lot of the students. Everyone in the end is trying to figure out how to navigate through all of this. Like, there's no blueprint, there's no right or wrong. It just seems like everyone is just trying to figure it out. And at the end of the day, it's okay to not be okay. And it's so important to check in with each other every single step of the way, you know, friends that you may not have heard from in a long time. And especially when you find yourself being that one Black person in your department or a person of color, you don't have to make yourself the token and to feel like you have to be the voice or carry on the weight of all Black people or people of color because you're the only one that identifies that within your department. Like Kevin said, it's okay to say no. And I know with Brianna, I can relate a lot about what she was saying too, just the fact of I'm all the way out in Boston and I really don't have a lot of family out here. And so it can be a struggle for me at times just because my family is, you know, about 10 hours away in Virginia and I just can't up and walk over there to see them when I want or, you know, when I'm feeling upset. But what I do really love and appreciate is that I can call my friends or, you know, I've had these conversations with Kevin here and there, Isaiah Spade, just in general about checking in with each other. And, you know, has your PI come to ask you about, you know, how do you feel during moments of the racial injustice or with indictment that happened to the officers in the Breonna Taylor investigation? And it's nice to be able to feel like I have people that I can connect with, even if they're not personally near me or physically near me. I know that they're not too far away and I can always contact them. And you all can do the same within these NOBCChE walls. It's a safe space. We're here to create that safe space and to have these open and honest conversations with you all. So feel free also that if you have more things to ask about or that you want to talk about, put it in this chat and I'm gonna get to it, trust me. So I think to also kind of echo a little bit about what everybody was asking and talking about, I want to ask this one question that a student brought in. I feel like a lot of people have this question, but it says, as a college student at a PWI studying biochemistry, how do I create a community of my own? A lot of people here are not in the same path as I am, and I feel left out, and I'm just too busy. What do you do?
I would love to take this question. So I actually got my bachelor's degree at Xavier University of Louisiana. So I went to an HBCU for my undergraduate studies, and then I came to the University of Mississippi, which is of course a PWI, for my doctoral program. And when I tell you that I experienced culture shock, I feel like I can't even really put into words how much of a transition that was from an HBCU to a PWI. And so my advice is to find your people, find your village, find your group, find your tribe, because it is so, so, so important that you have people that you can lean on. And they don't have to be people in your department. They don't have to be people who are scientists. When I first got here, my boss, she's a Black woman, Dr. DeVita Watkins, absolutely incredible, and I'm honored and blessed to work with her. But I also got to meet Dr. Morel Godfrey, who's the current president of NOBCChE, and he also serves as my mentor. But outside of that, I started going to the Career Center. There's a Black man there that I always go and talk to. He serves as my mentor. There's people in the sociology department. There's people just all over my campus. And I even got really, really close to our Vice Chancellor of Diversity and Inclusion, and she's been like, you know, another champion for me. And so I strongly encourage you to branch out of your department, find those people, find that community, because that's what's going to keep you going. And it's also really nice to have those people not necessarily in STEM as well, so that you can really just kind of decompress and take care of your whole self rather than just like that one part of yourself that might be struggling. And if you need someone in STEM, you know, you can always reach out to us. I'd be happy to chat with you and talk to you more about some of my experiences, but that's my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go really shortly. In this virtual space, it may be hard to meet with people. So go on Twitter, #BlackandChem, you'll meet a lot of people.
Definitely. And actually, speaking of Black and Chem, I feel that students and professionals all over have made amazing contributions and have been using this time in our history right now in our lives to really boost the awareness of Black excellence. How do you all feel like, did any of you have a chance to participate in Black and Chem? What was your experience like?
For me, it felt like, you know, just kind of like a constant pep rally for the whole week, where every time I got to meet and see a new chemist, I'm like, yes, yes, Mo, yes, yes, look, y'all fire, y'all the bomb.com. Like, you know, so just thank you so much to the ladies that led that initiative, because we have to see each other, and we have to see each other in so many different spaces. And I think, you know, taking advantage of Twitter and social media is just an excellent opportunity for us to continue to see each other, especially when you step out onto your campus and you don't have us that are necessarily there in these fields. And I think the other thing that I think was really important about seeing, you know, all of the chemists is also just recognizing all of the work that we're doing, which is, you know, above the bar for whatever the standards are in our, you know, disciplinary areas. And so I think it's just important that we see each other and we recognize each other, but I think having a broader community of scientists also recognize, you know, we not only just out here, like we out here and we're doing just as well in terms of our science. So don't think that we don't know what to do when we get in the lab in front of these fume hoods. We, you know, we got it going on, or computers if you're a computational person, but that's what it did for me.
So I want to jump in there. I posted on Black and Chem and Black and Analytical, and it was really exciting. You know, I can't say that I had much of a social media presence, probably still don't, but my number of followers jumped quite a bit after that. And I got some people who I have research overlap with reaching out to me as a result of that. So Devin in particular, I want to say thank you, because I actually made scientific as well as social connections that I wouldn't have made if I hadn't jumped in there. So even though I don't think I'm the typical Twitter demographic, I jumped in there and the water was fine. Thank you so much.
So how else do you think you can encourage students and early career scientists to amplify their voices as well, to make a difference or to make a positive impact in their community, regardless of what stage of their career that they're in?
So I like to comment on that, because if I had a do-over in life, that part of my earlier stage career, that would be a phase of my life I'd like to have a do-over. because I was told when I was a graduate student, well, Paul, I know you want to help people. Your mama taught, daddy taught you to help people, but you can't do that until you get your Ph.D. Then I got my Ph.D. and I decided to do a postdoc, and I got comments saying, well, Paul, you need to become a professor first before you, try to really, speak up and help people. So then I became an assistant professor, and some of those same and even more voices like, you really need to get in that lab. You can't really help anybody until you get tenure, and get promoted. And so then I got tenure and I got promoted. And so now I'm going through one phase, hoping the last phase of that process, and I'll still get some voices, that say, well, you really need to be a full professor for you can really say what you want to help your people. And so I say I wish I would have had a do-over, because if I could go back in time now, I would say, nothing that I accomplished in my career, I don't think I could not have done while still trying to lift as I climb. And I would encourage those students to not do what I did and block out some of those voices, because I find that now it is just as satisfying publishing a paper or being a part of a grant writing process with colleagues and students, just as it is helping someone else realize that they can do science as well. And that has not been mutually exclusive to me now. I want to say I almost was taught that when I was younger. And so that's what I would encourage to if I had a young person saying, how can I do that? Your heart does not have to do anything with your level of intellect. In fact, if anything, your heart is what facilitates your level of intellect, because what you want to accomplish is going to allow you to even help others if that's one of your goals. So thank you.
I agree really strongly with what Paul just said. As I look back over my own life, when I was younger, I definitely was encouraged to focus and think very hard about how to progress and how to advance. And it was always presented as an either or, not a both and. And I think the challenge there is that when you're young, you're planting seeds that are going to grow. And if you have this idea that you're going to be this very focused, narrow-minded person and then get tenure and change and now have a balanced life, that's just a fallacy. If you want a balanced life where you're active in more than one sphere, you have to lay the groundwork for that when you're young and you're developing your skills. So it's certainly true that you can make a mistake and get too far out in the public sphere and not pay enough attention to your science, because we all know that sometimes stuff's not going right in the laboratory or at the computer. And so then these other things are an escape. And we have to exert some self-discipline not to, give in to the desire to escape. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is what kind of seeds are you planting in the garden of who you want to be? And if you want to be a person that has skills and impact in more than one sphere, you can't wait until you get tenure to start that. So I just really want to encourage you to think strategically and be dedicated to developing in more than one area.
Yeah, to echo what you're saying about planting seeds, we also want to be mindful of the seeds that society plants so we don't water them, right? So I'm thinking about things like imposter syndrome. We're taught at a very young age that we don't belong. And then when we get into these spaces that most of us are overqualified to be in some of these places, we still don't think we're good enough. So what do? We put our head down and we focus on the science because we know that, we're taught that, I have to focus on this here task or else no one will take me seriously or I'll have no credibility. But honestly, that's not true. I think as young professionals, grad students, I think we need to be more bold and not be afraid to put ourselves out there, because you'll be surprised at how many people you help. And sometimes people are just waiting for you to say something, but because we're so tunnel vision, we're taught to be a certain type of way, we kind of limit ourselves. We limit our professional growth and our personal growth. So, so for the grad students who are on this call, when you have that feeling of, imposter syndrome, I challenge you to check it and figure out a way within yourself to deal with it, because that can be a seed that could be a plant that can grow, and that's a really, really bad plant.
Yeah, that's good, Kevin. I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got from someone in my career was to do you. And they gave me that advice when I was asking for teaching help. I was like, what? Can you tell me how to teach this class? And so that advice actually resonated in many different areas. And so coupling that advice with exactly what, Dr. Adams talked about, and having this being taught to me of, no, you got to wait. You have to wait until. And I heard a speaker, Kenny Gibbs, come in from NIH. And he said the reason he left academia was because he didn't want to wait until to help his people. So he got in a different place where he could do that. So coupling the do you with I don't have to wait until, I think just gave me the freedom to realize, yeah, maybe I don't actually belong. Yeah, maybe I don't belong in this space where people want to be so narrow-minded and focused, and they don't want to, expand the reach of what a scientist could be or just what you can be as a person. And so that helps me, one, with imposter syndrome, because I'm like, yeah, I don't actually belong in that space, but this is what my circle kind of space looks like. So if you on board with, we're going to help each other out, we're going to help people that are struggling, whether that's our undergrad students or going into our high schools and inspiring students to do research, while I'm also trying to figure out how to do in the lab, either get on board or, kindly please keep your comments to yourself. But I wanted to end with, I think the irony of it all is we're, encouraged to not use our voices and not do these other things that are important to us as people. But then we have all of these institutions and organizations that are, especially in times like right now, looking to do this work, which is the work of increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they want us to help do that work. So wouldn't it make sense then that as you're developing as an undergraduate or graduate, that you have some practice with learning how to lead and doing these things, so that when you get into these other spaces, because you're going to be excellent as a scientist and worker, that you can, fulfill and do both of these kinds of things. So that's not necessarily for us to think about, but if there are other people on here that are thinking about encouraging your students to not do this work, think about that for a minute.
And I will say that, so something that I guess is a little bit different about me is that I'm not very quiet about issues. I do like to do other things. Community service is really important to me. STEM literacy is really important to me, but also advocating is very, very important for me. And so at the University of Mississippi, I've led protests. I've sat on committees to advocate for students, specifically Black students, specifically for grad student rights and things like that. And, I'm not gonna lie, I've been met a lot with, oh, well, you're just a student. You can't do anything on this side of your PhD. Just wait. And, no disrespect to anybody that waited, right? But I also just feel as if I'm quiet on this side of my PhD, I'm going to be quiet on the other side of my PhD. And yes, of course you can change, but it's like, why wait when the problem is now? And also, I just want to also kind of say that, my thing, I guess a question I always get is, well, you don't want to shake too many tables. You don't want to, stir the pot too much. And if I can be real honest with y'all, if I'm shaking tables and people are that upset about me speaking out and advocating for students of color or Black students or graduate students or whomever I'm advocating for at the time, then maybe I don't need to sit at that table. And, that's just something that I've kind of had to grow and learn over time. So I'm hopeful that by speaking out, that other people can recognize and see that, I do have potential to not only be a leader, but also to do the science. I'm a good scientist. There's you could, that's not something that is difficult, but to also be a good leader, be a good advocate, and be someone that can, you know, speak out when there's an issue, that's also really important and also something that's really needed in academia. So I challenge y'all to use your voices. I think that's really important.
Preach. Better create your own table, okay? So, of course, along with everyone was saying about imposter syndrome, most likely being one, if not one of the only few, Black people or person of color in your department or in your institution. I guess, what are some ways that you all have been able to deal with that emotional baggage, dealing with that stress or that pressure of knowing that you're one of the few there and knowing that you're expected to perform? How are you all able to deal with it?
Well, I guess with having that seat at the table, I think that I try to kind of take it from a different approach. I know that I'm at whatever table I'm at because of someone that came before me. And even if I am the only one at that particular spot, I tell myself that I was invited for a reason. I'm at the table for a reason. I'm in that space for a reason. But what can I do to bring more people along with me? I think that that's also really important. And so trying to figure out how to open up that space, but also trying to keep in mind, like, you can't put all of that pressure on yourself. So I cannot and will not be the chief volunteer diversity officer of whatever committee or table I'm sitting at. I can't do it. I'm not getting paid to do that. That's not what I'm there for. So if I kind of find myself constantly being asked to do certain work, specifically if it's like diversity work, like, I don't mind doing it and I really do enjoy it, but if I'm constantly being asked to do it and I'm constantly the only person that's being asked to do it, then it might not be the space for me. Everyone at that table should be focused on improving the environment or the climate of whatever group they're a part of or whatever entity they're a part of. So I guess I try to approach it from a different standpoint of, like, maybe I don't belong to, I know I belong, but how can I get other people here as well?
Well said.
I want to jump in too. So I think I first began to make progress in this area, and I'm not finished, because these forces that we're up against are not trivial. And I think if you are a Black woman in a at a predominantly white institution, you're reminded of these issues often, maybe not every day, but often. And so it's not like you get to where you've dealt with imposter syndrome and it's over. It's something that you continually figure out how to work with it. But I first began to make progress in this area when I started reading the literature about not just implicit bias, but also I read Kahneman's book on thinking fast and slow, and how people revert to using stereotypes so quickly. When I started reading about these studies that people do where all they do is change the name, and the rate of getting positions and the rate of the score of the apparent value of the work changes with just changing the name on the CV, right? All of that stuff taught me that it wasn't me. It wasn't just me. This is a big societal thing, and I'm just here in the middle of it. And that helps me take myself out of it when people try to pull me into it, because they're trying to use their, they're trying to manipulate me with some power dynamics, right? And so the fact that I know these facts helps me not get drawn in. But it doesn't stop it from hurting. We're social beings. And so our interactions with other people are always going to matter to us. And we just have to equip ourselves to manage that and to be knowledgeable so that we don't draw the wrong conclusion when someone's attempts to manipulate us with a statement that attempts to diminish us.
You out here saying a lot, Dr. Neal. And one of the things that you said that made me think of something is knowing the facts. And the facts about yourself, you can write those things down and put them all around your spaces so that when you have those moments of, feeling like you're not enough or you're not supposed to be where you are, look at the facts. The facts are you probably graduated at the top of your class, or the facts are maybe you didn't, but you still made it to where you are now. And whatever other, accolades or different things that, are true about you. And I'm not one to like having like those kinds of things in my space because, not everyone means as much as the other. But a wise Black woman told me, she's like, no, I got some award and she sent me this beautiful plaque to hang in my office. And I was like, anyway, so she wanted me to hang it up because I didn't want to hang it up. And, I just thought it was doing too much. And she said, no, she said, there are going to be some days and you're going to feel like you're not supposed to be up here doing what you're doing, and you need to just turn around and look at that. And then you need to turn over there and look at that. And you need to remind yourself, you can figure it out, you can get the help you need, but you are where you're exactly supposed to be. So write down the facts about yourself, post them all around, so that when you have those moments, you can be reminded, that you are where you're supposed to be.
All right. Thank you both. How about when it comes to dealing with COVID in general? COVID has kind of turned up the entire world, whether you're in academia, whether it's industry. You might have been forced to work from home now. You may be a graduate student that has their lab experiments completely interrupted. I know mine's were. And, it was valuable amount of time that was taken out. But what, strategies do you think has worked for you when it came to transitioning to that remote space or more of the, a succinct lab time that's scheduled for you or your colleagues to use? Like, how has all of that helped you to become better at what you do, better at multitasking, or what are things that you can advise other people to follow and try?
I could start off with this one. So the COVID-19, the shutdown, whatever you want to call it, it affected everyone in like very different ways. I know for me and my company, we shut down in like March or April. But I was still going in from time to time because I was on a specific project. But then it gave to the point where they said, no, everyone's home. And it's kind of tough for like a lab facing employee because like my work is based on data that I collect in lab, so you kind of like had to figure out a way to be creative with what you had to do. So what I did during the pandemic, the shutdown, I started networking, and I realized that networking is so much easier remotely than it is in person, because I can just like go in my company directory and like put 15 minutes on someone's calendar and we could just like talk on Zoom or Teams rather than having to schedule a meeting, walk to their office or walk to their building and do all that. But then like nowadays, now that we can go back in lab, the schedule kind of changed, so we're not required to do full time. So now I'm like much more efficient in lab. I go in lab, I set up my experiment. I think about what I'm going to do because I know I'm not going to be there. I can't be there all day. So I'm in there for the couple hours I have to be, then I leave. So it made me more efficient, and it helped with my networking. So like, I know for like super shy people, it may be hard to really knock on someone's door. I'm not that shy, but I think this whole year kind of played well to the introverts because we're home and we don't have to like be out there like that. So I think it helped my networking. I met people from San Diego. I didn't even know we had a site in San Diego. So like so it's been good for me so far.
I think that this pandemic has taught me a lot about offering myself grace. I went through kind of a period of like feeling like I was not doing enough. I our school shut down in March, but it was weird because it shut down during our spring break. So all the grad students were there and none of the undergrads were. And because they had already been gone for a total of 2 weeks at that point, we didn't really shut down in the traditional sense of the word. We're really blessed that our lab spaces are pretty large. So we were able to continue to do research and things like that without really working from home too terribly much, but we were on a shifted schedule and I live alone. So it was like really, I never saw anybody. It was weird. But I started realizing that I would go into lab at like 5 in the morning and like stay until like noon or something like that, like a weird morning schedule. But then I would feel like I had to also go home and work this weird, ridiculous schedule on the computer as well. Like I felt like my days weren't complete, like I wasn't doing enough. And so I had to really offer myself grace and tell myself like, listen, you've done a lot of stuff today. So instead of making a to-do list, one of the things I started doing was making a I have done list and just keeping track of the things that I've done. And some days that just meant, okay, I put on pants and I read half a paper. Other days it was, okay, I actually like wrote some things. I went to the lab, set up 4 reactions, but offering yourself some grace and telling yourself like, listen, it's okay. I didn't have the greatest day yesterday productivity wise, but there's still a whole week and however long in front of me. So that's definitely something that I've learned over this pandemic.
Yes, a whole week, not a half.
One of the things that I've learned, in particularly specifically to my lab and having to follow guidelines, was I really learned a lot about patience. When I was on something, I wanted to get it done. I want to get it done now, just like every other PI, right? But I had to really come to grips that, I have 3 Ph.D. students. All of them had different emotional, outlooks on, the dynamic of our society in terms of the pandemic. And, in a lot of faculty meetings, the word coercion was used a lot. And I really appreciated the fact that it was talked about, because it was talked about from a vantage point that, you cannot come across as being coercive, or, trying to, encourage but not encourage students to get back in the lab. And I really found that I came from a professional standpoint into a better grip of being patient, because, even when things are going right in the laboratory, and I'm in, my laboratory, I work with proteins and, even when things are going right, it still could take a long time, and to have students who literally could not go in the lab for 3.5 months. And then now to go to a situation where for the last month, they couldn't be in there at the same time. We had to come up with time schedules where, one could be in the lab and then another one could be in the lab. And then as of a month ago, we had undergraduates to deal with in the laboratory as well. So from a professional standpoint and from a leading and being the boss of a laboratory, I learned a lot about patience and understanding that it is still not going. Some students, it's going to take them a little longer, or they're going to work at a different pace because of how they feel, and not even knowing what's going on within their families. I had one student test positive, and so that was a major blow for her and her family, because the entire family was of course quarantined. And so I'd like to say that I personally learned patience, and I would like to think, and I hope and I pray that other principal investigators who who are running labs would also have that kind of patience, because everybody's handled this thing in a different manner.
Thank you. Well, now go ahead, Sharon. I see you came on.
I was just going to say, one of the things that did help me, and I think, again, still work in progress. My graduate students and I are still negotiating, the limited access to the lab and all of those things. But I actually do still keep a schedule even when I'm at home, and I get up and I may have on sweatpants, but at least I put on enough clothes to be on camera. And, I actually do try to work for, I try not to overdo it, but I try to, have a schedule. And I think even though I'm home, I have a home office, I try to have a place for doing the work. And I think a lot of times for students, they don't have that luxury, but still this idea of, even if you're at home and you're not able to go to your lab, try to carve out mentally in your mind a time in the day for your work. And if you can't do it, that's all right. That's when Brianna's Grace comes in there. But try to give some structure to this very challenging and unstructured time.
Thank you, Sharon. Now we have about 5 minutes for Q&A, everyone. So I have a question right here, but if you have additional questions, feel free to put them at the bottom of the Q&A box or the chat. Panelists, I have this question, and feel free, anyone, to chime in if you'd like. Someone mentioned the issue of racial injustice and bias has always given the same result. The last example of that is the Breonna Taylor case. It looks like the system is designed to always come up with the same result: no justice for minority people. What does the panel think should be a solution moving forward for everyone in the U.S. that's treated the same way? Excellent question.
I don't think I have an answer for what we can specifically do, but I do want to say that there is space for scientists in the U.S. government. So there's space for scientists to serve on the Senate and things like that. And so looking for those fellowships and things like that are really, really important. And so we need scientists to be making different policies and things of that nature. I don't know how to specifically address, that, but there is room for scientists to address some of these things and some of these issues and some of the other issues that we've been facing, specifically like with the pandemic and things like that. So scientists can be policymakers and lead that charge as well.
Yeah, Brianna, that's a good point. I think that's a pretty loaded question. I don't think there's one answer, but I would say I would encourage everyone to be a disruptor in their own right. Every chance you get, challenge the status quo, because the status quo, like you said, Victoria, it wasn't designed for us. So if we continue living in the status quo, we can't imagine that anything would change. So if you're, if you get a new job and you see the recruiting practices are very archaic, challenge it. Ask them why they're only recruiting at these type of universities. Why aren't they recruiting at other universities? If you see unfair practices with distribution of certain jobs or responsibilities within a lab, challenge it. Because if we don't challenge it, they, quote unquote, they won't. And I don't think I need to mention who they are.
Thank you, Kev. You actually ended up kind of answering another question I was about to ask, which was from another audience member. How do you gain respect in your workspace when your work does not seem to be appreciated or is valued lower than others?
So I'd like to
piece of that.
I like to provide this statement that my father taught me when I was a teenager. And so he used to call me by my middle name because we had the same first name. So he would say, Damien, you got to be 5 times as better to be just considered as equal as. And you got to be 10 times as good in order to leave no doubt. What I mean by that, your work may not ever garner someone else's respect. But in my opinion, if it garners your respect and you keep your character and honor with you, then you're going to find that when you look in the mirror, you're going to be happy. And eventually other people are going to be happy with what they see as well.
Well said. Have you dealt with colleagues or advisors who continue to ignore your suggestions, especially for the Black women on the panel? How do you avoid the stereotype of being too direct or angry?
Okay, now you can't take responsibility for what other people think. Okay, so you just have to let that go. You're not going to be able to avoid it. You're a Black woman in America. Just accept that that is our reality. But what Dr. Adams just said about your self-respect and your own view of what you're doing and your own character, that's what you have to prioritize that. And you have to try to be smart and be strategic and figure out the right thing to say in the right setting. I'm not saying be crazy, but I mean, you really do have to have your boundaries up. You can't take responsibility for what other people are thinking.
All right, well, everyone, it is 2 o'clock. I first want to thank the panelists again for giving your insight, telling us about your experiences, being so transparent with all the questions that were thrown at you. You did an incredible job. There are so many positive comments that were put into the chat about how much everyone appreciates your perspective and your honesty and your openness and willingness to connect with all of us. Thank you, audience, for joining us for the conversation with leadership. And again, if I was not able to make it to your questions, feel free to email me. I placed it in the chat. I will be happy to connect you with any of these panelists, and I'm sure they'll be able to reach out to you. I hope you all enjoyed the NOBCChE conference and continue to connect, continue to feel that you are wanted in this space, continue to feel that you are important and that you have so much to contribute, not just to STEM, but just to society in general. So please continue to take care of yourself, be safe, and we all look forward to seeing you at the rest of the NOBCChE conference. Thank you all.